huge high school football Friday night last night. It was just the opposite, though, of the Friday night we had in week one in local high school football. The first week was full of drama. We had 5 games decided by a touchdown or less. Last night we had a whole lot of blowouts, a couple of close games, but mostly stinkers last night in area high school football. Kenwood High was involved in one of those. They beat Montgomery Central 12-0. Northeast beat McCracken County 28-20. That was one of the better games of the night. A huge upset over in Western Kentucky as the Clarksville squad goes up and gets the W. Christian County took down Rossview 18-7. Clarksville High lost at Springfield 34-14. Russellville beat Fort Campbell 20-6. Houston County rolled over Perry County 32-12. McEwen, that was another close game. McEwen beat Stewart County 21-14. Northwest took out Whites Creek 28-14, and Greenbrier rolled over West Creek 29-16, the final there. I always like to give you that high school football scoreboard. I have a lot of our listeners that ask for that first thing on a Saturday morning. And speaking of football, college football gets rolling today. The football championship subdivision kickoff taking place down in Montgomery, Alabama. Jacksonville State against Chattanooga in a game you can see live tonight locally on ESPN. It kicks off at 5:30. It's become something I really look forward to every single year. Some of the smaller schools get the big stage, and it'll be Jacksonville State and Chattanooga tonight on the 4-letter. 5:30 tonight on ESPN. And speaking of college football, that is where we will begin our show. We're joined now by the voice, the play-by-play radio voice of Austin Peay football on the Governor Sports Network, Brian Reeves. Brian, how are you this morning?
Great, Justin. How are you guys this morning?
I'm doing great, and I really appreciate you taking time out of what I know is a very busy schedule to join us. You know, for some reason, there's excitement, it seems like, in this area about a team that's lost 27 straight football games. And I'm thinking that has a lot to do with back-to-back top 5 recruiting classes. Obviously, Brian, I don't want to sugarcoat it. There was a talent deficit created during the Kirby Cannon era for Austin Peay football. How close is that gap right now to being closed?
It's closer than it's been, as you said, to when Rick Christoffel was the head coach here. I think that's a great point. Coach Healy and his staff has done a good job of restocking the cupboards, as you said, bringing in talent. They've also gone the non-traditional route. You know, I'm starting to get ready for Thursday night. I can tell you right now there'll be 3 junior college transfers that'll probably start on the offensive side and play more than guys that are returning from last year. So Coach Healy's not afraid to recruit over a player to make sure he's putting the best talent on the field. And I think, as you said, that's what's got some excitement going around this Clarksville community.
The Governors will begin their football campaign at Cincinnati Thursday night. It's a 6 o'clock kickoff, and we have got the voice of that game on the line with us this morning, Brian Reeves, joining us from the Governors Sports Network. And Brian, as you talk about transfers, that's something you and I have talked a lot about before, and that's the importance at the FCS level of being able to bring in some high-profile transfer players. Austin Peay, I think, as you said, they've dipped their toe in that pool just a little bit this offseason. Who are some of those not necessarily freshman newcomers that have a chance to really make a huge impact here in 2017?
I think the first one you'll notice right off the bat is Kyle Anderton. Anderton should start at left tackle for this offensive line. He's 6'1", 305. He's a junior from Gallatin. Went to the University of Tennessee. They converted him to a tight end, but really was never allowed to catch the football. He was basically a blocking tight end, an extension of that offensive line. Anderton just wasn't happy with that fit. He decided to come back, was told he would play offensive line. He settled right in. He has battled this group. Looks like he'll start at tackle on there. And you've got 2 junior college players that I think will make immediate impacts coming in. DJ Montgomery, the first one, 6'2", 200 pounds from Durant, Mississippi, was one of the top 10 junior college receivers in the nation last year. He's one of those guys that can really stretch and take the top off of a defense to open up some underneath things for this offense. And on the defensive side, Pat Walker, the junior coming from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, probably will not start defensively, but he's going to play that role at that weak linebacker where he can kind of roam the field. He'll get a lot of snaps. Walker is a guy they had fell in love with on the defensive side just because of his intelligence and his quick pickup of this scheme for Coach Cooper and Coach West. Walker's a guy that we'll call his name several times Thursday night.
Brian, speaking of the Austin Peay defense, that's something you and I talked a lot about at the end of last season and even back in the spring. It was far from good last year as the Govs gave up an average of over 500 yards and 50 points per contest. You mentioned Pat Walker, but another guy I think that could be a real contributor in the defensive backfield for the Govs is the JUCO transfer Malik Davis And, you hope some of those young guys as well can build on what they kind of tried to start last year. You think about a Jason Williams or a Chris Hopkins. Some of those guys have got some pure talent, you can tell. But when you look at the Austin Peay defense coming into the new season, how far are you, Brian, from calling that unit completely fixed?
The first thing I always look at is rushing yards. And you look at this defense last year, they gave over 6.4 yards per carry. Completely unacceptable. That's the number where you've got to start. And why do I say that? Because to me, that means that every rushing yard, they were in second short opportunities for the opposing offense. You've got to make offenses play behind the chain, second and long, third and long situations. So to me, that run game has to stop. And to me, that starts with that front four. You've got a returner like Jason Williams, a returner like Sean Whittinghill, some new faces that are becoming eligible. Redshirt freshman Matthew Gale, which they absolutely loved last year, set him on the sideline. He's a 6'5", 220-pound kid from Knoxville, Tennessee, that they wanted to mature a little, get his body caught up. They've got a junior transfer in Theron Hodges that'll play the nose guard. He's 6'3", 320. So they've addressed that defensive front. That's the difference. You and I said it last year, and I said anyone that would listen. There was enough talent in that defensive backfield, and with an All-American candidate, in my opinion, and Gunnar Shalato at that linebacking core and finished top 10 in the nation in tackle. There's enough talent at that second level. They just didn't get the help up front. They went out and addressed those needs in that front four, and I think that'll be the biggest improvement. If they can cut down those yards per carry, that's the first thing I'm going to look at over the first 3 weeks.
Austin Peay football starting their season out on the road. They'll be at Cincinnati Thursday night. The game kicks off at 6 o'clock, and we have got the radio play-by-play voice of the Govs, Brian Reeves, on the line with us this morning. Brian, we had a long chat with Austin Peay strength and performance coach Chris Laskowski this summer, and he was here with us and touting the unprecedented level of participation, specifically for Austin Peay football's off-season workout program. You're a guy who's been around Govs football for a long time, and as you watch early fall practices, what are some ways you can tell that off-season program's really made a difference?
One of the easiest ways, when you stepped out, and I've seen you at a couple scrimmages on Saturday before, there were more people dressed and ready to play than there were standing on the sideline in the mass unit. That's the easiest way I can translate to the layperson or the common fan of what strength and conditioning means. That means more players are ready to play, more players can fight through. There's a difference between being hurt and injured. We won't go into that conversation. But they can fight through being hurt and get themselves back on the field than a pure injury keeps them off the field. That's the easiest way to see those results. Now, are you going to see the offensive line get more push? Are you going to see the defensive line get a quicker first step and get, greater penetration into the opposing team's backfield? Those are things you have to look at during the game. But the quickest way to notice it for me is you had less players standing on the sideline with little nagging injuries because they had battled through it, improved their bodies, and gotten themselves ready for competition at the FCS level.
Brian, as you talk about the battle up front and that strength on the offensive and defensive line, I wanted to talk about depth because we keep hearing about it on Austin Peay's offensive line in specific. Coach Healy keeps talking about how good that group can be, but in what I've seen in the scrimmages, it looks like they lose a step or two when they start moving down the depth chart. To what extent do these Governors have what it takes up front to withstand those inevitable bumps and bruises that are going to take place throughout the course of the season?
Well, first and foremost, they've got a great compatriot in Coach Josh Ergel. Has been a head coach at different places, has been an offense coordinator, now the offensive line coach, and kind of the co-coordinator here, or contributor to the run game. So they've got a wealth of knowledge to pull on. I think what you're seeing when you see those scrimmages and they go to that second line, you're seeing a group of five that we will not really see play together. I think the depth comes when you can sub a guard in for a series, or you can sub a tackle in for a series, but still contain and still have that continuity that's needed to play together. You won't see a 5-for-5, hockey line change on that front line this season. God forbid major injury. But I think you're happy when you can put a sub in. And what you're happy with, I talked about Anderton early. That means that a Darrell Johnson, who's a senior, can sub in. That means when you're starting a Byron Glass at center, you've got Hunter Schmeiser who could play center, can slide over and play guard. You've got Ethan Self, who took snaps at guard and center last year. So there is some depth there in the middle. I'm not sure the depth is where they wanted at tackle. They're going to have some youth on the second line at tackle. But I think in the middle, this may be as strong of an offensive line. You've got to go back, in my opinion, you've got to go back to those early Christophel days, just getting off of scholarship football and bringing in those groups to have this quality of depth of offensive line as you have this year.
Yeah, it's really good to hear. And like I said at the beginning of our conversation, the excitement is there for some reason around a program that's really struggled as of late. Brian Reeves is our guest this morning. He's the play-by-play voice of Austin Peay football on the Governor's Radio Network. And, Brian, the Govs seem to have a really good problem at tailback. They've got Kentel Williams, who took the OVC by storm in the latter part of last season. Prince Mamadou is a guy who got some touches last year, but looks like he's completely transformed himself in the weight room this fall. And now freshman Ahmad Tanner is emerging and proving himself in training camp to be more than worthy of some playing time. What's the right way, in your opinion, to utilize all of those talented backs? And if it were up to you, how would you distribute the workload?
I think you've got to honor the guy who's coming back. I think Kentel Williams will be the first one out the gate on Thursday night. I think you'll see a lot of Ahmad Tanner as well. Right now, I think Kentel Williams, you're a little more comfortable with him in the passing game, using him as a receiver out of the backfield. Tanner was not asked to do that much coming out of Dalton, Georgia at the high school level. I don't know if they're comfortable with him here at the collegiate level yet, just putting that on his shoulders. Don't forget a young man by the name of KJ Johnson, a young sophomore out of Memphis who's kind of come on as well. And as you said it, Prince Mamadou, who was asked to be kind of the bell cow in that backfield, kind of the fullback, doesn't look like a fullback right now. Looks like he could go at tail and start for anybody else in the OVC, but you're right. I won't call it an embarrassment of riches, but I like the fact that they've got depth there. They don't have to ride one guy for the entire game. They can rotate, keep legs fresh, and as you and I both saw last year, that running game production started to go down as we hit the Eastern Kentuckys and the Kentuckys late in the season because they had asked so much of Kentel. Marvin Franklin at that point had started battling some injuries, and so the running game started depleted. Now I think you've got 3 legitimate tails. I think you've got 2 legitimate fullbacks or H-backs in that backfield where you can have some depth, and those running game production numbers should look more like those mid-season numbers where you got 200 to 250 yards per game than you're late in the game, late season where you barely scratched 100.
Yeah, that situation in the Austin Peay backfield is not far from an embarrassment of riches. I'll say that much. The Governors kick off the season at Cincinnati Thursday night. Game kicks off at 6. And the voice of that game on radio joining us now, Brian Reeves, kind enough to join us from the Governors Sports Network. And, Brian, you knew eventually we were going to get to the quarterback battle because it's been, I think, especially in recent weeks, pretty even. Early in camp, I thought Javon Craig was really a shoe-in for the job. He just looked more comfortable. But the freshman Jeremiah Oatsfall seems to be getting more and more comfortable himself each and every day. I'll ask this 2 different ways. Who do you guess will be Austin Peay's starting quarterback on Thursday night in Cincinnati? And then who do you think will be taking most of the snaps by the season's end?
I think Javon Craig will be your starter. Again, I think this is a team that will honor the guys coming back who produced for them last year. Jeremiah Oatsfall is a wealth of talent, but do you want to start your first game of the season on the road with a pure freshman in his first college environment? And that's not a knock on Jeremiah. I think he's one of those guys that maybe could handle that. But I think Javon Craig, and Coach Healy has said it many times publicly, there's just going to have to be somebody come in and unseat Javon Craig. Oatsfall has pushed him. I think that's been good for Javon, but I think Javon Craig will get the start and will go the majority of the snaps early. Now, to the second part of your question, by the time we hit the end of the season, and we start battling, looking at the end of the year at Tennessee Tech and Eastern Kentucky and Eastern Illinois, I don't have an answer for that because, there's so many variables that could go in. My gut tells me it's still going to be Javon Craig, and there's still going to be some packages where it is Oatsfall. I'll be honest with you, and I haven't seen it, but don't put the pass offense coordinator Wes Satterfield to have a formation where they're both in the backfield. I wouldn't put that past them at all and make the defense react and really cause some things go on. They did it a couple times last year with Craig and some other backup quarterbacks where they had 2 different quarterbacks in the backfield. Wouldn't surprise me to see it this year either.
Brian, as you mentioned, Coach Satterfield in the Austin Peay offense, I remember early last season in the opener, especially at Troy, that they didn't want to show too much. They were very vanilla. The playbook was very skinny in that opener. Will that be the same case, you think, at Cincinnati Thursday night?
I don't, and here's why. You've got an experienced quarterback, and, of course, Javon Craig made 5 starts, appeared in 5 games late, closed out. But you see those offensive numbers really go up with Craig in the back. You know, you talk about 314 yards to the air against Jacksonville State, 322 against Tennessee State, where Javon set the OVC, all-purpose record yardage. You start looking at the running game and how Javon allowed that running game to get going when he stepped in as a starter, because defenses had to honor his legs as well. So I think you're going to have a much more open playbook in the run game. Now, you're still learning your receivers. You've got a Goldborn, you've got a Wilson, you've got a Montgomery that's still kind of settling in there. You know, Josh Alexander, really the only returning receiver that played last year, and he's going to be your second man behind a freshman, D'Angelo Wilson, at the wide receiver. So I think in the running game, the playbook is going to be a lot more open. You're more confident with your offensive line. I think once you get that confidence in the passing game and know your receivers are going to get to the spot and run the routes you need it, I think this offense early on could look a lot more like late season last year than what we ever saw early against Troy and Tennessee Tech last season.
I tell you what, I'm just chomping at the bits. It is just around the corner. Austin Peay will begin a brand new football season Thursday night at Cincinnati. And Brian Reeves, the play-by-play voice of the Governors, on the line with us this morning. Obviously, Brian, things couldn't be tougher for Austin Peay starting out with back-to-back road games against FBS opponents. And then I think you put a ton of pressure on yourself by paying Morehead State to come into town for the home opener. I've been throughout the offseason calling that September 16th contest a must-win game for Coach Healy and company. That's a non-scholarship Morehead State squad. To what extent is that statement fair? To me, that's a game they've got to win. You can take it either way, but I think it's a must-win contest.
I think it's a very fair statement. I think you look at Cincinnati going this Thursday night, you really have an unknown. You're going into against the Bearcat team that's going to be under a brand-new head coach, and Coach Fickle, who's just now coming over from previously being the OC, working at the Ohio State. Now he comes over to take over a Bearcat program. So you really don't know what's going on. In week 2, you head to Miami, Ohio, a team that played Mississippi State to within a field goal last year in a bowl game that returns 9 of their offensive starters, and if I'm not mistaken, returns 7 or 8 of their defensive starters. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. So you're right. You're going to take some lumps against FBS opponents in week 1 and week 2. You get home. It's the home opener. It's, as you said, a non-scholarship team, a traditional OVC foe from back in the old days. Let's just go back 1 year. Think about the hype that surrounded Tennessee Tech coming last year under Will Hewley's first home game. Think about how full Forterra Stadium was. Think about all the hype and the pomp and circumstance in the Clarksville community going into that contest. If there's competitive football games in week 1 and week 2 against Cincinnati and Miami, I think that's going to be even higher expectations as a home opener against Morehead State. And to call it a must-win, I think, is a very valid statement.
The pressure will be on, but that's a huge game, and I think the crowd will be huge. Everybody's excited about the potential for Austin Peay snapping the nation's longest losing streak, and hopefully they'll do it before then, but that'll be a great opportunity on September 16th as well. The Governors getting set to open up a brand new season. They'll do so at Cincinnati Thursday night at 6 o'clock, and you can hear our guest this morning, Brian Reeves, on the Governors Sports Network. He does a great job with the play-by-play. And, Brian, speaking of doing a great job, I'll ask you to do the job one more time. You have every single season with us for this will be the 3rd year. I've asked you to kind of look over the entire schedule and help fans set some realistic expectations. From what you've seen on the field in fall camp and how tough you presume the competition is going to be, how should we perceive success this year for Austin Peay football?
You're going to see a lot more competitive football games. You're not going to get those 41-7s and 34-14, 45-17 kind of affairs that we saw last year. I think you're going to get more competitive football games. Think back to the folks that watched Tennessee State last year. You watch that contest. They're a minute and a half from breaking that streak last season. You look late in the contest against Eastern Kentucky. Until we commit some turnovers late in the contest, that's a one-score game as well. And then at Kentucky, you remember that first quarter looked fantastic. Then some depth issues and injury issues started to rear their head, and it got away from us late. I think you're going to see much more competitive football games. That's something that I think as a fan you've got to be proud of. I don't want to put a number on it. I think there is a number. I don't think that first number is 0 by the time we hit Thanksgiving and we're sitting down to our turkey and talking about the recap of the season that was for Austin Peay. I don't think there's going to be another goose egg. I think it's a crooked number and not a straight number as well. But I think the first thing you're going to look for, you've got to look at this defense shutting down opposing teams' runs. You've got to look at this defense pressuring opposing quarterbacks, not letting them step back there and pick you apart. And you've got to look at the emergence of the receivers in this passing game. If those things come to fruition, I think it's going to be a fun year for Austin Peay football.
Well, I think so, too, and I know that with you on the call, it'll always be a good time. I appreciate you joining us this morning, Brian, and I appreciate everything you do for Austin Peay football. You do a great job covering the team, and I'm excited, just like you are, about what could happen this season. I hope you get to have a lot of fun on the air this year.
I hope so, too. It's always fun to be with you and get into the splash on Saturday morning. Look forward to doing it again during the season, hopefully talking about a couple of big victories. But, yeah, if nothing else, support your local university. You know, folks that may not have a tie to Austin Peay, may not have went to school or graduated, but if you're in the Clarksville-Montgomery County community, if Austin Peay is doing well, the Clarksville-Montgomery County community will do well, as will echo off of that. So just support this group is the best thing I can give any advice, and I always appreciate you and your coverage as well. Great job on the high school level for you, and I always enjoy being with you on the Splash.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Appreciate it, man.
Anytime.
Brian Reeves, the play-by-play voice of Austin Peay football on the Governor's Sports Network. You can hear him online at letsgop.com. You can also watch Thursday night's game on ESPN3. The Governor's taking on Cincinnati, and boy, you know, just to stop and dream a little bit, that would be a national story. If Austin Peay snaps a 27-game losing streak and they beat Cincinnati on Thursday night, they're going to be on every sports talk show in America. They're going to be all over ESPN. That would be the biggest story in college football. I don't think there's any doubt. So we'll dream about that a little bit as the Govs get set to kick off their season. And speaking of dreams, Conor McGregor has got some big ones, and he's been verbalizing those dreams as of late, talking about knocking out the undefeated great Floyd Mayweather. Mayweather 49-0 coming into the big boxing match tonight. You can watch it on pay-per-view. It'll get started around 8 o'clock. You know how boxing is. You never know how long the undercard's going to go or when the main event's going to get started. But it'll start around 8 o'clock tonight on pay-per-view. Floyd Mayweather taking on Conor McGregor. You know we're excited about it here on the Saturday Sports Splash, and we're going to talk about it next. Damon Martin will join us from UFC.com as we get you ready for the big bout right after this.
Made to order, never frozen Midwest beef served on a toasted buttery bun is just the beginning at Culver's of Clarksville. The experience crescendos into fresh homemade custard that you can customize into delectable treats like sundaes, banana splits, or one of their signature concrete mixers. You'll be treated like family and fed like royalty at Culver's of Clarksville, near Exit 4 just off Wilma Rudolph Boulevard at 140 Southampton Place. Culver's of Clarksville. Welcome to Delicious.
Jackson's Body Shop downtown. Jackson's Body Shop downtown. It's your car, it's your voice. Jackson's Body Shop, the best choice. Dents, dings, major body repair. A pre-loaner car, 'cause we really care. Jackson's Body Shop downtown. Jackson's Body Shop downtown. Call 647-6989 or Jackson's.
Looking to catch the big game with a group of friends? Do it O'Neill style. Want to see a great live band rock the stage? Do it O'Neill style. Hungry for a great meal or just thirsty for an icy cold draft beer? Get them O'Neill style at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, a genuinely great American sports bar. They've got wall-to-wall TVs, huge selections behind the bar, and a menu that obliterates the average pub fare. Clarksville's best times take place at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, located at 1979 Madison Street in Midtown.
There's finally a stress-free, no-risk way to buy a new mattress thanks to Beds Express. With their Triple Z guarantee, there's literally no way you can go wrong. Don't waste another night tossing and turning on your old, worn-out bed. Dive into affordable comfort at Beds Express in Clarksville at 1767 Wilma Rudolph Boulevard, Bellevue at 7643 Highway 70 South, and in Murfreesboro at 2222 Medical Center Parkway. Beds Express, Middle Tennessee's better sleep solution.
WJZM Radio, Clarksville, Tennessee.
Well, we could not afford Michael Buffer for our show this morning, but we are ready to rumble as Floyd Mayweather gets set to take on Conor McGregor tonight, not in the octagon, but in the boxing ring. And joining us to discuss the fight, Damon Martin of UFC.com. Damon, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And as we come into tonight's fight, the Conor McGregor line is that boxing experts are claiming he doesn't have a chance because they are trying to protect their sport. To what extent do you believe there is a level of concern that exists that maybe if McGregor were to slip up and beat Floyd Mayweather tonight, that would be the final nail in the coffin in terms of the UFC's boxing takeover?
Well, to a certain extent. I mean, listen, it is a boxing match, and so, ultimately, the rules are set for boxing rules. But, a Conor McGregor win would definitely not help boxing, considering Floyd Mayweather is considered one of the greatest boxers of all time and definitely the greatest boxer of this particular era. So it would definitely be devastating to boxing to lose to a mixed martial arts guy with no professional record, no professional experience in this particular sport. If he can go out there and beat Floyd Mayweather, who 49 other guys have tried and 49 other guys have been defeated, it would definitely be a black eye, let's say, for the boxing hardcores. I don't think it's a black eye on the sport because, listen, it's a spectacle, it's entertainment, it's a fight. You never can be surprised when a guy wins a fight who goes in there intending to knock out the other guy. But I think the hardcores of boxing, the boxing experts, so to speak, would definitely take one on the chin if Conor McGregor goes out there and wins.
Damon, this may be a little off topic, but I was just talking with my producer off air, and I think we've got some listeners that probably have similar questions. When is this boxing match going to actually start tonight? I know the pay-per-view coverage starts at around 8 o'clock Central Time. When should we expect the fight to actually get going?
You're probably looking closer between 11 to midnight Eastern Time. So, yeah, that's about when they should be walking to the ring. Boxing pay-per-views, typically, take things very, very late into the evening, which I guess is not that unusual for UFC pay-per-views either when you're looking just at the main event. But yeah, you're probably looking between 11 and midnight. Usually it also depends on the earlier fights in the evening, how long they last. They have a couple of championship fights happening on the pay-per-view ahead of Conor and Floyd. So you're probably looking between 11 and midnight Eastern time for that. Usually around midnight is a good guess, but again, it all depends on the earlier card. The pay-per-view goes live at 9 p.m. Eastern. So once they get, all the pre-fight hype done, and then they have a couple of, obviously, the fights also taking place on the pay-per-view, that's probably when you'll look at Floyd and Conor walking to the ring. The actual start time for the fight, you're probably looking a little past midnight because the walkouts are going to take quite some time, and the introductions and all the pomp and circumstance. So yeah, you're probably looking well past midnight before they actually start the action.
It'll be well worth a late night, folks. At least we're hoping so. Damon Martin is our guest from UFC.com as we get you ready for Floyd Mayweather against Conor McGregor tonight in the ring. And Damon, as you talk about the entertainment aspect of all this, you mentioned that a moment ago, there seems to be a lot of skepticism surrounding this fight. If McGregor were to find a way to win, how tough will it be to sell the public on the legitimacy of that result?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, if you watch Conor McGregor, if you know Conor McGregor, and if you follow Conor McGregor from the mixed martial arts side, everyone knows he's a competitor. He's a fierce competitor. He's a guy who has always said he's going to be the greatest of all time, and he wants to go down as the best that's ever been. So for him to go out there and win, you would have to know that the guy is a competitor. He goes out there to win. That's what he intends to do. I don't think, listen, Floyd Mayweather is, all the things Floyd Mayweather said to help hype this fight are true. He is 40 years old. He's been off for 2 years. He is a smaller guy. He doesn't hit as hard as Conor McGregor. Those are all factors. Now, there's been a lot of boxers with a lot more experience than Conor who have gone in there and had the same, advantages, being younger, being bigger, being stronger, all those things, and gone out there and just gotten picked apart by Floyd Mayweather for 12 rounds. But like I said, this is a different animal. Conor McGregor is a guy who truly believes in himself, truly believes he has what it takes to beat Floyd Mayweather. So I mean, will there be the naysayers who will try to scream rigged or something fishy was going on? Of course, there's going to be those people. But anytime, I would imagine going back all those years ago, I would imagine when Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson, there were quite a few people, in that era that would have said, "Oh my gosh, what is going on? This is crazy. This is the guy who's like a 49-1 underdog. How does he beat Mike Tyson?" We struggle to go in there and try to rough him up. He's going to go in there and not throw conventional punches. He's not going to go in there maybe even have the conventional boxing stance. Those are all things that that have tried and failed against Floyd Mayweather. So he's not going in there to box Floyd Mayweather. He's going in there to fight Floyd Mayweather.
Well, let's talk about that just a little bit more, Damon. Stylistically, in your opinion, what favors each fighter? In terms of game plan, what is the perfect storm for Conor McGregor? And on the flip side of that, how does Floyd Mayweather avoid that storm?
Well, for Conor McGregor, the perfect storm is to come out, quick out of the gates and take advantage within the first four to five rounds. Floyd Mayweather, if you look traditionally at his career, the only times he's had many struggles against Zab Judah, Marcus Maidana, Shane Mosley have all been in the early part of the rounds. What Floyd does as a master in there, beyond being a defensive genius in the ring, is he's a guy who gets better with each round passing. He finds a way to figure out an opponent's timing, their footwork, their speed, and this happens over the first 4 or 5 rounds. Once it gets to round 6, round 7, Floyd has figured all that out, and he starts picking apart his opponent. So Conor has to come out there aggressive, and he has to look for that knockout early in the first 4 rounds, especially considering Floyd is coming into this fight off 2 years off, 2 years of retirement, which is a different mindset than just 2 years of being out of the sport with an injury or 2 years of working your way back in. He's been retired for 2 years, so that is a different mindset. So Conor needs to go out there, get in his face, and really start looking for those punches. He needs to work to the body and then work to the head. He's a much bigger, much stronger guy. He needs to get in the clinch with him and rough up Floyd, and that means punching into the arms, punching into the head, punching into the body, roughing up those arms, get that lactic acid built up so Floyd's arms are a little more tired. Those kind of things are going to benefit Conor McGregor, and he needs to fight him in a weird way to say this, like an MMA fighter. He needs to go out there and rough him up a little bit. Make Floyd know that he is the smaller, not as strong fighter. If he could do that, Conor McGregor can land the knockout. For Floyd Mayweather, the way to counter that is to do his defensive mastery in those early rounds. Do not engage much with Conor McGregor. He's going to turn it into a boring fight. Unfortunately, that's kind of been Floyd Mayweather's MO in the latter half of his career, is that he's not the most exciting guy. So he needs to counter Floyd. He needs to counter Conor by not doing much in return. He needs to move. He needs to stick and move. He needs to use his defense and keep Conor off him early, because then at that point he can start counter-shotting Conor McGregor, and that's where he will take over, or could take over, as I said, from rounds 5 on.
Damon Martin is our guest this morning on the Saturday Sports Flash from UFC.com as we get you ready for the big boxing match tonight. Conor McGregor taking on Mayweather. And you mentioned that boring style of Mayweather, and I wanted to ask you about that, Damon. Comparatively, how much more entertaining is this fight going to be tonight than the Mayweather-Pacquiao kind of dance-off we were forced to endure? And as all of the experts are saying that McGregor will have to take some chances in order to give himself a real shot at winning, how might that translate, you think, into a better product for the fans?
Well, I think it will be a better fight, because when you engage Conor McGregor in a fight, you're getting a guy who is always exciting. He does not have that kind of style where he goes out there and just tries to pick his opponents apart with outside shots, defense, and then just tries to outpoint them. Conor McGregor goes for the knockout. Conor McGregor goes for the finish each and every time he steps into the octagon. So I think it will be a more exciting product. And when you typically look at the guys who have gone and made the fights with Floyd more exciting, it's the guys who do go after him, the guys who do get aggressive early. As I mentioned, that Marcus Maidana fight, the first one, ended up being a majority decision in favor of Floyd Mayweather, and he got beat up a little bit in those early rounds, and he got surprised. And I think a lot of people were shocked by how much Maidana went after him. When you look at the Canelo Alvarez fight, same thing. Canelo was a much bigger, much stronger guy. Now it ended up being a very lopsided fight for Floyd Mayweather, but he had to fight him in a certain way that he couldn't fight other people. When he fought Manny Pacquiao, Pacquiao at the end of the day was a much smaller fighter. He had actually an equal size or a little bit bigger than Manny Pacquiao in many ways, and Pacquiao struggled to get inside to really land much of anything significant on Floyd, and so he could just kind of use his defense and that shoulder roll he does to kind of keep him off him. It's going to be harder to do that with Conor, who is a much bigger, much longer fighter, and he's going to go out there and try to knock out Floyd. And then I think, conversely, for Floyd, Floyd has to prove something in this fight. I mean, he is ultimately fighting a guy with no professional record whatsoever. In your head, if you're Floyd Mayweather, if you're the boxing community, you're thinking this guy needs to go out there and just annihilate Conor McGregor. He cannot make this a 12-round boring decision. He cannot go out there and barely beat Conor McGregor, who has no professional experience against the greatest boxer of this era. So there's pressure on Floyd to go out there and perform and not make this another boring 12-round decision.
Absolutely. And there was nothing more boring than that Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. That was not fun to watch at all. We're hoping for something much better tonight as Floyd Mayweather takes on Conor McGregor. Our guest this morning, Damon Martin from UFC.com, as we try and get you ready for the bout. Damon, Floyd Mayweather has been out there publicly promising that tonight is going to be Conor McGregor's last ever fight. Financially, that makes sense, as McGregor is going to make 10 to 20 times what he's ever made for a UFC fight. But what are the scenarios you think in which McGregor might consider not hanging it up after tonight's big payday?
Well, I don't think Conor McGregor hangs it up either way, win, lose, or draw. I mean, Conor McGregor is a guy who has a lot of money, and he's going to have more money after this fight, obviously. But he is a guy motivated by legacy as well. He's a guy who, as much as he's talked about money and being the money, being the money star in the UFC, he's also a guy who wants a legacy, built upon success, built upon, title reigns, and built upon title wins. I mean, that's why he was so emphatic about going out there and becoming the first ever simultaneous two-division champion when he beat Eddie Alvarez last year. He wanted to be that guy. So I think win, lose, or draw, you're going to see him back after this fight. I think a loss to Floyd Mayweather is going to damage Conor's pride. He's going to be damaged in his pride, and he's going to want to go out there and prove himself again, in the octagon, which is where he truly belongs and where he's at his best. And that means going back and defending his lightweight title, setting up maybe a trilogy fight with Nate Diaz. There are opportunities out there for Conor. If he wins, that's even bigger, of course, because then it opens up all sorts of possibilities. I mean, I still believe he will eventually make his way back to mixed martial arts. But then, the possibility, and if you beat Floyd Mayweather, anything else, hypothetically in boxing would be a step down, considering what Floyd Mayweather has meant to boxing. But, there's still the potential of another, $50 or $60 million payday if he goes out there and fights the winner of Canelo and Triple G, which takes place 3 weeks later. And that would be an equally big fight. Not equally big as far as Floyd, but I'm saying an equally big fight that would make Conor very, very rich and give him another opportunity to prove himself. And then there's also the possibility of a rematch with Floyd. If he beats Floyd Mayweather, and let's say he does knock him out, Floyd has said it's his last fight. But if he loses, I guarantee you he's going to want to come back for a rematch. So I think Conor comes back either way. I think the way this fight plays out is just ultimately where it's going to tell us he's going to go.
Absolutely. And last time you were with us, Damon, you were with us right after the fight was announced, and we talked about the publicity tour and how everybody expected Conor McGregor to really win the trash talk battle. Were there any successful head games you think played either way during all of that? Which fighter would you give the mental edge to going into the night?
Well, I mean, I think Conor definitely got the better of him, although I do think Floyd had a great poker face the entire time. He never allowed himself to look rattled or to look upset. And you're the legend. You're 49-0. You're Floyd Mayweather. And the crowd is just absolutely unrelenting against you. I mean, that's got to hurt. I don't care who you are. And then I think Conor has, hit him with a few things subtly. He wore the C.J. Watson jersey around, and that's been a controversy. That was a big thing with Floyd's domestic violence history. And so he's had these subtle little jabs at Floyd Mayweather that I think have bothered him and have gotten to him. He did the whole tax thing, questioning Floyd Mayweather's actual wealth. And I think that's what Floyd Mayweather, as much as he touts his 49-0 record, he also likes to tout that he's the richest athlete in the world. And that's why I think you are seeing in these videos they're doing pre-fight, you're talking about the cars he's buying and the spending sprees he's going on. He's trying to prove to people that 20, even if it's under that by 4.8 million buys, it still breaks the all-time record. I think it will break the all-time record, and I think it will come close to 5 million buys. There's just so much buzz and hype, and even the people who say, I'm not going to watch this sideshow, I don't want to spend my money on the Floyd Mayweather fight. When it gets to about 9 o'clock and they look on social media and they see everyone talking whether I think the 8-ounce gloves that they're fighting in are an advantage for Conor McGregor. He hits like a truck, and that left hand will come down the pipe at least a couple of times and tag Floyd Mayweather, and I think if he gets him hurt, Conor McGregor can absolutely finish him in those first 4 to 5 rounds. If it goes past round 5, you're looking at a fight where Floyd Mayweather is going to take over with his defensive mastery and just his overall boxing skill. The more time he has to get an opponent's footwork down, head movement down, that's where he starts picking him apart, and that's where Floyd Mayweather will start doing damage. For my prediction, listen, I know I'm the mixed martial arts guy. I know I'm kind of picking as the homer here. It's like, a shocking pick when you talk to a guy from Columbus, Ohio, as I am, and you're asking me to pick Ohio State, Michigan. Yeah, I'm pretty much always going to go with Ohio State because that's my team. But in this particular case, there's just something about Conor McGregor, and it's because I've been covering him, even before he was in the UFC. There's just something about this guy's self-belief, and there's something about this guy's will to win that just makes me truly believe he can go out there and knock out Floyd Mayweather. I've been saying Conor McGregor by third-round knockout, not only because Conor McGregor is just an animal that we've never seen in combat sports, but also because I think there is an element, as much as Floyd Mayweather has the boxing skill, I truly believe he's underestimating Conor McGregor. I'm not sure he takes this fight seriously, that he believes Conor can even touch him, that Conor can even do damage to him. And when you have that mindset, when you think you're just going to go out there and blow through a guy, that it does make you a little susceptible to some surprises.
One of the greatest things.
I just think there's some surprises coming.
Well, I hope you're right. I think that's something that maybe all of America's cheering for, which is really a rarity. You got an American boxer, a great American boxer, against a guy from Ireland, and everybody's rooting for the Irishman. So I think that's an interesting kind of, I guess, take on this and the way that it's all gone. But I think it says a lot about Floyd Mayweather. And you mentioned it earlier, Damon. It's kind of a testament to just how hated he is. And so I think everybody's rooting for Conor tonight. Everybody hopes you're right, and everybody knows you were great on our show this morning. I appreciate you joining us, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Damon Martin, kind enough to join us from UFC.com. There'll be almost 5 million pay-per-views tonight bought for that boxing match. Conor McGregor against Floyd Mayweather. Everybody's looking forward to it. I know a lot of you will be watching, and I will as well. You just got a bold prediction there from Damon Martin. He picked Floyd Mayweather to fall in 3 rounds against Conor McGregor. And I think there is an aspect of maybe underestimating the opponent a little bit, and that's one of the best things you can do against a quality or for a quality opponent is underestimate them, and maybe that's what Floyd Mayweather has done. We're going to round out our show today after a quick break talking basketball, believe it or not. Our final guest of the day, the host of Marching to Madness. It's a great podcast. If you don't know it, you need to check it out. Blake Lovell will join us next. He had a great take this week. He thinks the Ohio Valley Conference is the most underrated league in all of college basketball, and we'll talk with Blake about that next. Basketball season will be here before you know it. I know it's football season, college football starting today with the FCS kickoff game, but college hoops will be here right around the corner, and Blake Lovell will join us to talk about how he thinks the OVC is the most underrated league in America. We'll have that discussion right after this.
Looking to catch the big game with a group of friends? Do it O'Neill style. Want to see a great live band rock the stage? Do it O'Neill style. Hungry for a great meal or just thirsty for an icy cold draft beer? Get them O'Neill style at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, a genuinely great American sports bar. They've got wall-to-wall TVs, huge selections behind the bar, and a menu that obliterates the average pub fare. Clarksville's best times take place at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, located at 1979 Madison Street in Midtown.
How did you sleep last night? Did you wake up sore, or worse yet, still feeling tired? Say goodbye to that constant state of drowsiness with one quick trip to Beds Express. They're fighting sleepless nights one bed at a time, and they're doing so with a trusted staff of comfort experts trained to get you a good night's rest at an affordable price. Go see them at 1767 Wilma Rudolph Boulevard in Clarksville, 7643 Highway 70 South in Bellevue, or at 2222 Medical Center Parkway in Murfreesboro. Visit Beds Express today and sleep well tonight.
Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. It's your car, it's your voice. Jackson's Body Shop, the best choice. Dents, dings, major body repair. A freeloaner car, 'cause we really care. Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. Call 647-6989 or Jackson's.
Family
family outings should be special. They should be memorable. They should be fun. And you'll find all of that and more with a short trip to Culver's of Clarksville. With a focus on customer service and quality farm-fresh ingredients, Culver's is serving food and fun at a whole new level. Go by today for one of their made-to-order butter burgers or a waffle cone stuffed with fresh frozen custard. They're at 140 Southampton Place, just off Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. Culver's of Clarksville. Welcome to Delicious.
WJZM Radio, Clarksville, Tennessee.
Something for everyone was kind of the theme of today's show. We started off the show talking a little college football. In the middle of the show, we got you ready for the big boxing match tonight, Mayweather against McGregor. And as I said going into the break, college basketball season will be here before you know it. And that leads us into our final guest, the host of the Marching to Madness podcast, Blake Lovell, kind enough to be here with us. Blake, how are you this morning?
Good, Justin. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing great. Great to be with you. You caught my eye this week on your show. You claimed the Ohio Valley Conference is the most underrated mid-major league in all of college basketball. You know, Blake, the OVC hasn't won an NCAA tournament game since 2012. So what exactly is your case for it being an underrated conference?
Well, I just think that people nationally, and obviously not everyone can see the games in the OVC. Not everyone can see every game that's played, but someone located, in this area that has a chance to not only see games on a national level, but see a lot of OVC games. When you compare it to other kind of mid-major leagues around the country from top to bottom, I think the OVC is one where it's struggled in some years, but I think they're kind of at the point now to where they're ready to take off. And my case would be that you have a lot of really good coaches that have come into this league now, and in a league where it seems like Belmont's kind of dominated since they've been there, scrapping the divisions, getting these coaches in there, I think you're fixing to see kind of a real big upturn here for the OVC.
Blake Lovell, our guest this morning, he's the host of the Marching to Madness podcast as we talk a little college hoop. Maybe we're talking about it too early, but I think in this neck of the woods, it's never too early to talk basketball. Blake, you mentioned the coaching in the OVC, and let's start out with the dean of them all, in Rick Byrd, who's earned countless accolades for the work he's done at Belmont. But on the flip side of all of that, how do you explain the postseason collapses that Coach Byrd's teams have been guilty of in the last couple of seasons?
Well, it's one of those things. It kind of goes back about just maybe the depth of this league continue. It's just one of those deals where in March, if you get hot at the right time, it doesn't really matter what you've done all season long, and unfortunately, Belmont's been on the wrong end of that. They
have. In the last couple of years, Coach Byrd and company have struggled in the postseason. And while we're on the topic of coaching, Blake, I want to get your thoughts on our new head coach here in town at Austin Peay. Coach Matt Figger comes in highly touted as the associate head coach off a Final Four run with South Carolina. However, he's been in the game for over 2 decades, always as an assistant. Why, in your opinion, is Austin Peay the right opportunity for a guy like that in terms of elevating his career?
Well, I just think it's a perfect fit for all parties. And, you think about it, a guy who's coming off of, like you said, being in the Final Four as an assistant coach, and not many teams around the country can say that, they have a guy that's leading their program that's coming out of an assistant role in a Final Four. So that's something I think Austin Peay needs to be excited about. The turnaround's not going to happen right away, but I do think in terms of Matt Figger, a guy who's finally getting a chance as a head coach, it's a great place to start, like I've been saying, because the OVC is a rising league. And to be able to work under a guy like Frank Martin for as long as he did, at Kansas State, at South Carolina, he's going to bring that toughness. He's going to bring that mentality. And this is going to be a team, 2 or 3 years from now that's going to be a defense first. And they're going to want to play just like the South Carolina team did last year, and we saw kind of what happened, how far they could go in doing that. So he's a really, really good coach. I think he's someone who a lot of people may not really know right now, but boy, they're going to get to know him soon. I think he's going to do a great job there.
Last question on coaching, Blake. I wanted to ask if you're surprised at all about the way things have worked out for Coach Anthony Stewart at UT Martin. He was a last-minute hire, and one I thought at the time was kind of a temporary fix, but after a run to the conference semifinals, he recently signed a contract extension. Is that the right move, you think, for UTM? And is Coach Stewart the kind of guy that can get them where they want to go?
Well, it's funny you say that because we actually talked to him late this week, and we're going to put that episode up on the podcast next week. And, I think he's excited just about that opportunity. And you look at what they've done. I mean, he was able to be there, kind of during the rise there of that program. He learned under Heath Schroeder while he was there. We know they now have been able to get to the conference tournament, final the past 2 years now. And I just think it's a matter of you kind of see how everything comes together. This year they're going to have a lot of new players on the roster, and that's one of the things where you look at that and you always kind of wonder, they lost some important pieces from last year, but they get a guy like Matthew Butler back. Now going forward, it's really just a matter of seeing how all the new pieces come together. And I think this is going to be an interesting year for them because, like we said, it seems like there are other programs around the OVC that are kind of rising as well. Really, it's a matter of just Anthony Stewart keeping things steady there and continuing to move up the ladder.
Blake Lovell is our guest this morning on the Saturday Sports Splash. He's the host of the Marching to Madness podcast, and he is a fellow lover of OVC basketball, claims the OVC is the most underrated mid-major league in all of college hoops. And, Blake, one thing, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, one thing the OVC has that I love is parity. From top to bottom, it seems like the league is always extremely competitive. What's your opinion on how that level of equality is maintained throughout the conference? How is it that there are never really any teams that seem to be the haves or have-nots throughout the league?
Yeah, it is. It's just one of those things where I think people kind of underestimate just the overall talent that comes into the OVC. I mean, we talked about that actually with Coach Stewart the other day is, you think about all the guys that have come through the OVC throughout the years, and especially recently, guys who've come through had a chance to get to the NBA level and have success at the NBA level. And when you think about that, these aren't just guys that are on the top teams in the OVC. There are other guys coming through, at other programs as well. And so I think it's just a matter of continuing to stockpile that talent, and it does go back to the coaching in that even, it's one of those deals where you look around conferences around the country, especially the really what most people consider the highest of quality of the mid-major conferences. It's all because they kind of had an infiltration of new coaches come in and a lot of guys that are continuing to kind of move forward, especially with recruiting and that kind of stuff. And that's what we're seeing more in the OVC. And it's always been a really good basketball conference. I think people have overlooked it in many years. And, we've seen changes, obviously, with Belmont coming in and all that. Does nothing to strengthen the conference. Now with them scrapping the divisions, going back to the 18-game conference schedule, I think we're going to see more and more of it now just because, it's just going to give teams an opportunity to really continue to rise there.
Blake, what about individual players? I know it's going to be tough to name any Austin Peay guys due to their kind of complete roster overhaul that's going on right now, but who are some of the perceived stars that you'll be sure to have an eye on as we head towards a new season in the OVC?
Well, I know Austin Peay fans aren't going to be excited to hear this one. Have to see this guy again. Jonathan Stark at Murray State is just an outstanding player. I mean, he's someone that, boy, he was just so fun to watch last year. He put up 41 points, 37 points in two conference tournament games, and he averaged almost 25 a game last year. Just someone who can score, and he will be the guy to watch that atmosphere year in and year out at those two places. But when you look elsewhere, I mean, we kind of feel like everybody else is kind of continuing to take a step forward. A place like Tennessee Tech, we know, is never easy to play at. Austin Peay, certainly, I think Matt Figure's going to have that place rocking here. Like we said, they've had some roster changes this year, but it's going to be back to rocking like it always has. And there's so many different situations where if you have to play these teams on the road in the OVC, there are no gimmies, and we've seen that so many times in recent years, especially, not only going to the perceived, powerhouses in the league when we talk about teams like Belmont or Murray State or Tennessee Martin, teams like that over the past couple of years, but it really is going anywhere. No matter where you're playing, no matter what the team's record is, there are a lot of fun atmospheres in this league.
Yeah, and like I said, the trips are easy, and it's a fun league to follow, lots of parity, and I appreciate you kind of giving them some attention this past week on your podcast and touting a league that is sometimes overlooked. I appreciate you joining us this morning, Blake.
Hey, absolutely, anytime. Thanks.
Blake Lovell, kind enough to join us. He's the host of the